Hello out there, this is Wakeangel2K1, and I'm coming at you with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toy review of a character that I've always wanted since I was a kid, but never found a right toy of him. And thanks to the new 2015 TMNT cartoon toy line, I finally have an Usagi Yojimbo to call my own. Now let's get the figure out of the way just for a moment so we can take a look at the packaging. Oh boy, let's pull it back a bit. Yeah, it's your standard blister. You get to see Usagi Yojimbo is nice and up front. You see that he has like a dark shadow cast on the top half of his muzzle. And you see Leonardo standing behind him in full samurai regalia, and the other three turtles up there in the corner. So it's not bad card art. I don't really watch Nickelodeon except for this show, so I never see the commercial ads for when the new season of Ninja Turtles is coming on, and it always catches me by surprise, and I end up having to marathon it afterwards. They need to advertise the show more. The back of the box shows Usagi Yojimbo standing amongst the other turtles, and this is the real reason why I wanted to get a picture of the card art in, so we could play how badly did Playmates screw up the actual release figure compared to the promo art. Because as we all know, the promotional art figure, the promotional figure is always like some kind of awesomely super painted prototype, and then the one that actually comes out usually looks like crap because it's underpainted. And in Usagi's case, they actually did pretty darn good. I mean, they got the scar on his forehead. They got all the details of his costume. Really, the only part of the figure, of the prototype that they have painted that the figure doesn't, are the scabbards and his swords. Like here, the scabbards have this nice little thing going on where the top part is painted to look like it's wrapped up in cloth and like it's integrated into his belt. While here, his belt is not part of the sculpt of his scabbards, and they're just kind of these big unpainted pieces of rubberized plastic. Although they are nicely sculpted, you can see there is detail in the sculpt. It's not painted, but it's there. Same with his swords. They're unpainted plastic, but the sculpt is there, and they are nice stiff plastic. Not so stiff that it's brittle, but not so soft that it feels rubbery, which is just the right consistency. So yeah, the only part of the prototype figure that looks better than the actual release toy is the scabbards and the swords. The figure itself is actually just as good as the prototype, which is fantastic. I'm not used to seeing that from Playmates. Although, as you can see, it looks like the band that keeps Usagi's ears tied up in a top knot, which, why would a rabbit do that? Isn't he basically plugging his ears when he does that? That's where the eardrums are, all the way at the bottom. He's actually limiting his hearing by doing that. Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, here it's painted a nice blue, whereas here the wraps are just white, like the rest of his head. They're sculpted, but, but still, the prototype doesn't have those painted in either, so I'm not going to hold that against it, just because it doesn't match the show model. But yeah, for once, we have a figure that's just about as good as the prototype, so yay! Alright, now let's get into the review proper. Okay, so Usagi Yojimbo is a really cool guy. He stands at about the 5-inch mark. Here is Donatello, who is, not counting the ears, he is barely a hair taller. No pun intended. I mean, Donatello is the tallest of the Ninja Turtles, so if this was Michelangelo, he'd probably be a little bit shorter than Usagi. And if he was Leonardo, he'd probably be about the same height, so that's your scale. And I think that's a pretty good scale for him. It's not, unlike many characters, he feels neither under nor oversized next to them. Although, let's get one thing straight. These in this toy line, characters almost always feel undersized. I'm looking at you, Leatherhead and Super Shredder. Alright, this figure has god tier articulation for this line. He might actually be one of the only figures I've ever seen that has superior posability to the turtles themselves. So let's get into that. He has a ball jointed head, which actually has a pretty good range for expressive tilting and of course turning. I love his face sculpt too. Like you can see he has that scar on his forehead picked out with just a little bit of off red paint. And his eyes are really good. The one on his right eye, camera left, seems like it's looking a little bit off to the side, but from this angle, it can actually look like he's giving you a sidelong glance, like that. So you see that now it looks natural. I like how his mouth is sculpted in a sneer, and they really picked out his lips, and they gave him those three little freckles on his cheek because he can't really sculpt in whiskers. His gi is very well painted. The belt goes all the way around the back. This little circle in the back, I feel like it should have gotten a dot of paint, but maybe it's supposed to be another one of these little circle symbols. But you know, if it's supposed to be, they didn't paint it. I guess I'd have to watch the show to see if they show him from the back. And continuing into his articulation, we see he has universal jointed shoulders and universal jointed elbows and a wrist swivel. Yes, that's fantastic. I don't think any of the other figures have that besides the Turtles themselves. Maybe Casey Jones, although I don't think all of the Casey Jones have wrist swivels. Funny thing, if you look here, you see his elbow compared to the way the gi is sculpted. Like, yeah, you see? Now the gi, it's like kind of rotated 90 degrees. So like if you sculpt, it's not completely symmetrical. I think they did this to accommodate the scabbard. They made his elbow go in this direction so that when he's standing with his arm at the side, his arm naturally curls around the scabbards and it looks like it's hanging naturally. So, you know, nice little bit of forethought. And since he has a wrist swivel, you don't really have to worry about his hand being in an unnatural position when you're actually posing him with his swords. He has universal hips, which actually get a little bit of backwards movement before they're stopped by the sculpt of the gi. Unfortunately, they are the type where the pin is in the wrong orientation. Like, it goes up into the body instead of into the crotch. So, like, his leg won't come out unless you rotate it to the side. This is unfortunate, but normal for this line. And I'm just happy that he actually has knees underneath. A thigh swivel would have been nice, but that's really not something that we'd expect to see from this line. It's not a very deep bend, but it's okay enough. And there's something that even the Turtles don't have. His ankles rotate. And look at how beautifully his sandals are sculpted. And they're picked out in paint. Like, that, I don't, like, yeah, like, this is, like, they obviously really love Usagi Yojimbo because I don't think any characters have been given this combination of articulation and paintwork. It's just not something I've ever seen in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line. Not even for fan favorite characters like Karai, who didn't have elbows. And seriously, ankle rotation? I don't think. Seriously, I think you could count on one hand all of the characters that have ankle rotation in this toy line, and I don't think you even need all your fingers. So that is just fantastic. So his accessories are, of course, his two swords. One of them is a katana, and the other a wakizashi. You know, the shorter sword, which samurai would use as a backup in case their primary sword was lost or damaged. And, of course, he holds them in his hand very firmly. Hold on, let me just get them in there. They fit in really snug. There's no looseness to them. You can put them in sideways and then rotate them so his hands get a nice solid grip. And, yeah, that's pretty darn awesome. Just like Leonardo, he can look really badass wielding two swords. And, yeah, this figure is god tier for the Playmates TMNT line. I probably would have been tempted to collect the entire line if they all had articulation and paint job quality of this level. Like, this is This is above and beyond what we usually see for the TMNT line, which, despite how much I love the Ninja Turtles and how much I think the turtle figures themselves are pretty darn great, the line itself is very frustrating to me because they often really skip out on paint detailing or articulation, and in some really terrible cases, both. But this one delivers in just about every field. Usagi Yojimbo was fantastic. If you're a fan of the character, this is probably his ideal toy, and I highly recommend it. This is Wakeangel2K1, signing off.